10 spine-chilling Reddit tales, sinister secrets revealed in terrifying, haunted encounters. Ella scrolled through her phone, the blue glow of the screen lighting up the dim room. "What are you doing up so late?" her mother had asked yesterday, but Ella shrugged it off. Nighttime was when she could breathe. But tonight felt different, prickly with dread. As she dove into the spine-chilling tales, the ghostly stories of neighbors with hidden pasts sent shivers down her spine. Each tale was heavier than the last, gripping her with fear, twisting her stomach like a vice. One story chronicled a neighbor a perfect family, it said, whose son vanished without a trace. Ella swallowed hard. Did the parents cry out as they tore through the house, while the boy was hidden within the walls? Could someone in her suburb harbor such horror? Behind the peaceful picket fences and curated lawns, was there a lurking darkness? She could feel panic creeping in. The comfort of her quiet street shattered with each unsettling story. Another account revealed a local teacher, well-loved, cheered at school. Her heart raced. Memories of her son's laughter echoed, genuinely innocent voices, now contaminated by the ghosts of shadows that walked their streets. A chill snaked down her spine. Ella closed her eyes, imagining the safety she'd felt living here. Muffled whispers echoed in her mind as she read story after story, her heart pounding in sync with every twist that exposed the sinister underbelly of their neighborhood. All of these accounts were rooted in the very people she saw at her local coffee shop. The mailman, the librarian, the kind-faced woman who always smiled at her children. Were they all hiding a dark side? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Sudden sounds erupted from upstairs, a creaking floorboard, a whisper made louder, skittering footsteps. Ella's heart pounded as she whirled towards the stairway, her breathing quickening. "Mommy," called a tiny voice from the shadows above, unmistakably her daughter's. A light flickered, dancing along the edges of her mind. The once vibrant stories now turned into a living nightmare. The skin prickled on her arms. Was it the blanket of night or an unseen presence? The laughter of her children became tainted with an erratic edge, speaking of an imaginary friend. Who was this friend? What did they whisper in the darkness? Ella's resolve wavered. It was more than just words on the screen. It was the fabric of her reality unraveling. Desperation clawed at her as she rushed to her kid's room, breathless and searching. She could sense stares, a chilling suffocation. The sensation of being watched pressed onto her shoulders. Shadows swirled at the corners as she tiptoed, ready to uncover the truth. Steeling herself, she pulled open the door slowly, revealing innocent faces, yet behind those innocent eyes loomed a darkness that screamed for her attention. Could this ordinary suburb be a breeding ground for secrets too dreadful to face? She couldn't shake the feeling her neighborhood was layered with unspeakable dread, just waiting for her to peel it back. Ella gripped the wooden frame, heart racing, her resolve growing. Whatever was happening, she needed to confront it. Had she become a player in a sinister game spun by the very people she trusted? Outside, the night held its breath, as if waiting for her next move. Ella stood at the threshold of her door, pulse racing. Was she prepared to delve deeper, to challenge the monsters hiding in plain sight? As she stepped out into the unknown, the air grew thick with anticipation. Eyes felt glued to her, shadows slithering just beyond her periphery. Would she uncover the truths that could shatter everything she built? Or was she about to walk straight into her darkest fears? The night swallowed Ella whole as she stepped into the muggy darkness outside. Each step felt like a whisper of dread. Shadows seemed to swallow the light from her porch. The glow of her phone was her only beacon in the oppressive black, illuminating the patch of grass ahead like an island in a sea of uncertainty. She moved slowly, dread curling in the pit of her stomach. Silhouettes of trees loomed like sentinels, their branches like gnarled fingers reaching toward her. The air held a thick tension, thick enough to slice, and every rustle of leaves set her nerves aflame. Something was wrong. Had it always been this way? She shook her head, trying to disperse the creeping anxiety that shadowed her every thought. "Mommy, I'm scared." Her daughter's voice echoed in her mind, launching a prickle of panic through her spine. What had she done by stepping into the unknown? Something was out there. She could feel it, that a flicker behind her made her heart skip. She turned sharply only to find nothing, just the familiar sight of her house. The curtains were drawn tight, but she could have sworn she saw a shape flit past a window. Her pulse quickened. Had something been watching her, hidden in her own home? Panic clawed at her throat. Maybe it was just her imagination. Ella pushed those thoughts away. She had to be brave for her children. She remembered the stories she'd read, how the storytellers felt when they gazed into the abyss of their own neighborhoods, only to uncover the terrifying truths nestled in the familiar. "Stay focused," she whispered to herself, her voice shaky against the emptiness of her surroundings. The streetlights flickered ominously, casting long, distorted shadows that danced on the pavement like dark phantoms. As Ella ventured further down her street, the silence morphed into a symphony of unsettling sounds, a distant howl, the swish of something brushing against the ground. Her instincts screamed at her to turn back, to retreat to the safety of her home, but curiosity tethered her in place. What if there was something there, something she needed to find? Every house she passed appeared unchanged, yet they felt charged with a new energy. The mailbox of the Johnsons, the whimsical garden of the Roberts, some innocent touchpoint for every child's laughter, now felt like wrapping paper, hiding a grotesque secret. She could almost hear whispers behind their closed doors, the stories of lives lived amidst the horrors she feared. The hairs on the back of her neck prickled. Suddenly, a figure darted across the street, shrouded in darkness. A heartbeat quickened in her chest. It was gone too fast to identify. Was it a child? Or something more sinister? "Who is there?" She called into the thick night air, her voice breaking slightly. No response came, only the subtle rustle of a nearby bush. She stepped closer, every nerve on high alert. A flutter of movement caught her eye. Someone was standing just beyond her vision, almost blending in with the shadows. How had she not noticed it before? The edges of her world blurred. A feeling of being utterly exposed rushed over her. Then it spoke. Ella, even without seeing the figure clearly, she felt its gaze bore into her. A chilling recognition tugged at her memory, a memory too clouded by fear to grasp firmly. "Who are you?" Panic laced her voice. "What did they want?" "Your time is running out." The words dripped with an ominous promise. Ella stepped back, heart racing. The darkness seemed to close in, the night pulsing with an alien heartbeat. What did that mean? What was happening? The figure faded slowly, still watching, leaving her breathless in the night. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, but something else tugged at her, an insatiable curiosity mixed with paralyzing fear. Ella turned and ran, sprinting back toward her home, but the terror of what lurked behind her surged forward. As she reached her front porch, she knew deep down this was just the beginning. She had tempted fate, and now it was time to face the consequences of her hunting for truths buried in the shadows. Would there be a way to escape what was unfolding, or was she already ensnared in a dark web spun by unseen hands? Ella burst through her front door, slamming it shut behind her. The sound echoed, a desperate plea for sanctuary. She leaned against the wall, trying to catch her breath as shadows from the streetlight crept into her living room, stretching like fingers eager to snag her. Her heart hammered in her chest. She pushed away thoughts of the figure that had spoken her name, the echo of its voice swirling in her mind like a haunting melody she couldn't shake off. "What does it mean? My time is running out," she whispered to herself. An icy shiver slithered down her spine. The overwhelming silence of her home felt stifling. She glanced around. Everything appeared unchanged, yet a familiarity had shifted. The air tasted stale, like it had witnessed too many unspoken fears. She raced to the window, peering through the heavy curtains. The street was empty, bathed in an eerie stillness. A sudden soft thud in the distance jerked her attention. Her pulse raced again. The sound felt like a warning. With shaking hands, she reached for her phone, desperate to pull in a semblance of normalcy. It flickered to life, the screen illuminating her trembling hands, and just then a notification buzzed. An unfamiliar message flashed on her screen. "You shouldn't have looked." Ella's breath caught. Who sent this? The figure slipped back into her thoughts, that sense of being watched piercing straight through her. Had it followed her home? With mounting resolve, She steadied her breathing and decided to lock the door. She turned the bolt with a loud click, but a part of her knew that physical barriers would do little against whatever dark presence lingered outside. Her phone buzzed again, vibrating against the countertop, pulling her back to reality. The fear gripped her, but the curiosity gnawed at her even more. She opened the message. It was simple, just a string of numbers. 2:15 a.m., she read aloud, puzzlement washing over her. What did it mean? Another sound caught her ear, sharper this time, a scrape against the side of the house. She jumped, her heart leaping into her throat. The world outside had taken on an ominous tone, and the darkness loomed heavier. She felt trapped within the four walls, alive with her own rising panic. The dread tightening around her like a noose that a frantic bang echoed from the back of the house. Was that a window? Or someone trying to get in? Ella clutched her phone tightly, a pitiful weapon against the unknown. The familiar shadows now felt alive, shifting and swirling, whispering secrets she couldn't grasp. Please, she pleaded, her voice barely a whisper. Just go away. Another thud resounded, the sound reverberating through her bones. It was rhythmic, taunting her, pulling her closer to the back door. She knew she should retreat, but the looming dread entwined with morbid curiosity. She had to know what was out there, what awaited her once she opened that door. Ella took a cautious step toward the rear of the house, her breath compressing in her chest. The thudding grew louder, and she realized it matched the pounding of her heart, two beats in the dark, intertwining, both desperate and urging her forward. She reached for the doorknob, hands trembling, every nerve and screaming. The door swung open, revealing a veil of night thicker than the air inside. Shadows spilled into her kitchen, and she hesitated on the threshold. Just beyond, she thought she saw a movement, a fleeting silhouette disappearing behind the wooden fence. What waited out there? Who was there? She cried, her voice breaking the tense air, dissolving into the oppressive silence. Nothing but a gust of wind whipped through, chilling her to the bone, and in that moment, she felt the weight of her decision crash over her. The night was alive, and it wanted something from her. Time ticked away. 2:15 a.m. loomed closer with every heartbeat. Ella stood on the precipice, caught between retreat and facing the unspeakable truth hidden in the shadows. And then, without warning, she heard it. A voice, soft and insistent, curling around her. Ella, come find me. The invitation was chilling, spiraling through her veins. What lay ahead? What awaited her in the night? Before she could grapple with the thought, she stepped forward into the void, heart racing, mouth dry. But what would she discover beyond the door? Would she find salvation or something far more sinister lurking just out of sight? Ella stepped beyond the threshold, the cool night air wrapping around her like a shroud. The world outside felt different, alive, charged with a buzzing energy that sent prickles racing over her skin. She was no longer inside the confines of her home, but in a realm cloaked in shadows and whispers. Come find me, the voice echoed in her mind, a serpent winding through her thoughts. There was a hollow sincerity in it, a promise of knowledge mingled with dread. She hesitated, glancing back at her home, the warm light of her living room juxtaposed against the threatening dark. The sound of her own heartbeat pounded in her ears, drowning out everything else. Each moment felt both like eternity and a fleeting breath. The thudding noise continued, now distantly rhythmic, almost melodic, like a heartbeat drumming in the night. It pulled her along the side of the house, where the shadows danced and flickered. Ella took a deep breath, swallowing hard against the fear. Was that you? She called out into the void, straining to hear a reply. The night held its breath, waiting with a stillness that felt alive, hungry. No response. Only the voice, still echoing, still demanding. As she moved, her foot caught on something soft yet unyielding. She stumbled, catching herself just in time. Her gaze dropped to the ground where a patch of damp earth lay disturbed, freshly turned. Panic spiked as she backed away, her senses screaming that something or someone had been here, close enough for her to feel it. Stay calm, she whispered to herself, but the words fell flat against the encroaching terror. She pressed forward, drawn inexplicably towards the source of the voice. The figure flickered in the peripheral of her vision, a dark, writhing mass by the fence. The moonlight couldn't define it. It seemed to shift, merging into the shadows. Ella felt a tug of fear, but curiosity rooted her feet to the ground. "Who is there?" she shouted, her voice trembling, a fragile thread in the vast darkness. The presence heavier than before, now unmistakably alive, slithered closer, brushing against her mind. Feeling desperation claw at her throat, Ella turned on her phone, the bright screen illuminating her immediate space, slicing through the thin veil of darkness. With one hand trembling, she raised the phone in front of her, desperate to expose whatever lingered just out of sight. The stereo of thuds intensified, the rhythmic echoes now a cacophony, colliding with her racing heart. Suddenly, a chill swept through, and the figure emerged. It was no human form. It morphed with jagged edges, the face a blurred etiquette of sorrow and rage, drifting between the known and the unknown. Elliot spoke, but it wasn't a voice more a sensation, a fevered whisper curling in her mind. "You shouldn't have looked." The words turned inside her, resonating with fear. The phone trembled in her grip as a new message arrived. Ella's fingers shook as she opened it. "Find me before time runs out." The absurdness of the message hit her like a slap. Why? What did it mean? The figure's face twisted, revealing a constant smile that sent icy fingers down her spine. "Does it scare you?" it taunted, morphing into a ghostly visage, eyes piercing through the dark. "You'll never escape the truth." Panic erupted. She had to run, but her feet felt glued to the ground, her mind screaming for flight. "Please stop," she gasped, her heart a prisoner in her chest. Yet the figure swirled closer, enveloping her as if seeking to devour the very essence of her fear. Then silence. The figure halted, hovering inches from her face, its features sharpening into focus. "Ella, your time it's almost up." And with that, it melted back into shadows, leaving her reeling, mind racing. What did she need to find? What truth was there that sat just outside her grasp? With dread pooling in her belly, she turned towards her home, but felt an urgency reverberate through her. "Find me," it echoed in her mind, a mantra that pulled her back. She stood trembling, realizing that something awaited her within the dark depths of her own backyard. Something that would unravel everything she knew. What truth was waiting in the shadows, and how much time did she have left to uncover it? Ella stood frozen, her pulse thunderous in her ears, each beat punctuating the looming darkness. The shadows behind her swirled and thickened, alive with whispers that seemed to brush against her skin, urging her to stay. But that taunting voice lingered, echoing dread in her mind. "Find me." Each syllable rippled through her thoughts like an uninvited guest. She braced herself, stomach churning, and took a tentative step toward the back of the yard, where ghostly moonlight struggled to penetrate the veil of darkness. Each footfall raised the hair on her arms, the ground beneath her shifting, almost breathing in time with her rapid heart. As she moved further, the oppressive weight of night pressed in on her. Was she truly alone? The thought gripped her, a potent mix of vulnerability and unease. The wind howled, carrying an unfamiliar scent, damp earth mixed with something metallic, like blood. She hesitated, fear doubling back upon her. Just a little further, she murmured, clutching her phone tightly, its screen flickering. A sudden rustle in the bushes sent a jolt through her veins. "Who is there?" she called out again, voice cracking, uncertainty lacing her desperation. Silence enveloped her, thickening the air, until nothing. Then came laughter, soft and melodic, a perverse echo that made her skin crawl. It wound around her like a serpent, squeezing as she tried to decipher its source. Shadows shifted with the sound, and she was sure she saw something moving in the corner of her vision. "Help me." The plea was faint, but it struck her like a slap. Help me? Who? What was she supposed to do? Panic began its slow churn in her stomach again. The very ground seemed to shift under her, as if urging her backward. The message still flickering on her phone caught her. "I find me before time runs out." Time, she muttered, struggling to focus. The words churned in her mind, heavy and foreboding. But before she could string the reality of it together, a flash of movement drew her gaze. Something flickered by the corner of the old wooden shed, just a shadow, she told herself, yet it felt too palpable, too close. Feeling rooted to the spot, she clenched her fists, recommitting herself. She couldn't go back. Something was out there, waiting for her. With every ounce of determination, she called out, "I'm coming to find you." The laughter again this time, louder, more taunting. It pierced the night, swarming around her like a swarm of angry bees. This wasn't a simple game. She could feel it, tangled in the very air she breathed. Her instincts surged like wildfire. Turning toward the shed, she stepped closer. It loomed like a specter, its dark silhouette casting long, jagged shadows on the ground. The door was slightly ajar, creaking ominously in the wind. "Please don't haunt me," she whispered, the futile plea catching in her throat. Yet dread pulled anew as she shoved open the door, heart racing in rhythm with the rising shadows. Inside, cobwebs clung to wooden beams, and the air turned thick, stale. A ragged breath escaped her. "Just find the truth," she muttered, pushing through the darkness. The darkness seemed to breathe with her, each step echoing painfully loud. Suddenly, she froze. A small chest sat off to the side, bathed in moonlight, ancient and ominous, like the mouth of a hungry beast. "Ella," a voice echoed right then, stark and demanding. It sounded so familiar, twisting the knife of realization deeper. "Open it." Desperation clawed at her throat, but fear left her paralyzed. What lay within? And was it the place that held the truth, or merely another deception? She stood, trembling, the darkness closing in tighter, a cage she couldn't escape from. Did she have the courage to pry open that chest? Did she dare to find out what awaited her before time ran out? But one thing was certain: the moment of truth was drawing near. What would the shadows reveal when she opened it? Would she be prepared for the horrors lurking within? The chest sat there, taunting her, but the darkness felt alive. It whispered secrets in a language she could almost understand. "Open it." The voice slipped from the shadows, seductive and chilling. Memories washed over her like a cold tide, an echo of childhood fears that should have long been buried. Ella's hands trembled as she reached for the chest. Its wood was weathered, rough against her fingers, and she could feel the pulse of dread beneath her skin. Whatever was inside, it belonged to her past. Would she find clarity or chaos? "What do you want?" she shouted into the dark void, squeezing the edges of the chest. The laughter rippled back at her, bouncing around the shed, as if mocking her plight. "Find me." As if sensing her hesitation, the air grew heavier, a palpable pressure that constricted her lungs. She could almost hear hearts beating in time with her own, each thud a reminder that she was not alone. Drawing in a sharp breath, Ella wrenched the lid open. The hinges creaked, a sound that echoed the fear in her heart. Inside was a collection of items, some familiar, others foreign. A cracked mirror, the shards glittering like tiny stars. A framed photograph of a family, familiar faces twisted by time. And resting on top, a delicate silver locket, tarnished and cold. It felt significant and, at the same time, cursed. Ella lifted the locket, her heart racing. As she did, a chill swept through the shed. The lights of her phone flickered violently, illuminating shadowy faces in the corners. She heard whispers bloom from behind her, too many, too disembodied, blending into an unintelligible choir, echoing her name like a death knell. "Ella! Ella!" Panic surged. The familiar voice from the darkness was a shuddering mirror to her fears. "Ella, don't you remember?" She spun around, but there was only darkness, swirling like a storm. The memories crashed against her like relentless waves, dragging her under. How could she forget the nights she spent trembling under her covers, convinced something lurked just out of her reach? Something that knew her. "Open the locket, Ella." The voice echoed again, now laced with urgency. "You must know the truth before it finds you." With a pounding heart, she hesitated, only briefly, the compulsion overwhelming. Flipping open the locket felt like unearthing a long-buried secret. On one side, a faded image of a girl with haunting eyes. It was her, but older. On the other side, an inscription: "Time only reveals what it devours." Her chest tightened painfully. The light from her phone dimmed, the shadows creeping closer, no longer just silent observers, but tangible beasts now, thrumming with anticipation. "Show me," she cried, tears brimming. "Show me what you want." A sudden surge of energy coursed through her, and the locket began to glow, its brightness illuminating the shed like a lantern against the pressing dark. Ella felt something brush against her arm, something cold and clammy, the touch of the unknown, alive and wanting. Then the temperature plunged even further. The glow was snuffed out, replaced by the oppressive, suffocating darkness. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. A shadow detached itself from the corners, reaching for her. Cold fingers grazed her skin, and in that instant, she felt it, a promise of revelations and nightmares intertwined. Did she dare to unravel more? Even as terror gripped her, the voice returned, now commanding, "Your time is short, Ella. Find the truth before it finds you." What awaited her beyond the shadows? Why now? What did it mean to confront the truth in a world so steeped in lies? The world around her felt like it was collapsing. She could almost hear the clock ticking away the minutes. Time was running out, and as Ella's breath caught in her throat, she knew one thing: she was about to awaken deeper horrors. Just then, a scratch echoed sharply behind her, stealing her focus. Did the darkness hold yet another secret? Something far worse waiting just beyond the veil? Ella spun around at the sound, heart thundering against her ribs. The shadows danced, dragging her attention away from the chest. Something was shifting, shuffling just out of reach. She strained her eyes, searching for a form amid the blackness. Was it merely her imagination, or was there something solid lurking in the dark? "Show yourself," she called, absurdly brave, even as her breath hitched in her throat. The rustling ceased, and for one fleeting moment, silence enveloped her, as thick and stifling as the air in the shed. Then, a low growl echoed from the corner behind the chest. Her heart stopped. It sounded like an animal, or maybe something worse, a creature that knew her fears, her weakness. Ella, the voice, softer now, crawled out from the dark. "Do you remember the game we used to play?" A flicker of recognition ignited a memory, but it was a spark suffocated by dread. The game so innocent back then had taken a dark turn. A childhood ritual to summon whatever lurked between shadows and dreams. "Stop," she croaked, stepping back instinctively. The corners of the shed seemed to close in. The chest, the locket, the memories, they trapped her in a web of her own past. Hadn't she buried it all? Yet here it was, clambering back to life like a malignant spirit. "Open the locket," the voice echoed, then fell to a hiss. A rustling followed, building around her, as if the very shadows were whispering her fate. Once more, she grasped the locket. Its chill seeped through her fingers, igniting a feral urge to flee. But stay or go, she knew the truth would claw its way to her, demanding her attention. With a deep breath, Ella yanked the locket open. The dim light provided a brief reprieve, casting her reflection back at her. But the image no longer held clarity. The girl staring back was twisted, contorted as though she were trapped in endless agonies of the past. "Please," she whispered, desperate. "What do you want from me?" A voice, deeper this time, resonated from the shadows, shaking the very walls of the shed. "You must remember, Ella. Only then can you escape." Just then, the photograph slid from the chest and clattered to the floor. The image shattered, and the faces in the photograph erupted into a cacophony of cries. Each scream ignited a fresh wave of terror within her. All at once, she was pulled into that memory: 4 children playing in the sun, laughing. Then, darkness falling like a curtain, and the laughter turning to shrieks. "Remember," the voice commanded, rising to a near pitch of panic. "You need to face them." The ground trembled beneath her, and a shivering coldness wrapped around her ankles, tugging her down. She fought back instinctively, heart racing, but with every pulse, the darkness ratcheted tighter. "No," Ella shouted, a defiance rising from the pit of her gut. "I refuse." With a violent clatter, the shed quaked. Light flickered, illuminating the creeping shadows. For a split second, she thought she saw them: faces, eyes filled with anguish and regret, reaching out for her. They waited, and she could hear their cries now, pleading for release and revenge. "Your time is short." Ella, the voice broke through the turmoil, now laced with something darker: hunger. "You must choose." Ella felt the ground shift beneath her, the shadows binding her tighter, the edges of her vision threatening to blur. She grasped the locket, heart racing. She had to confront this terror head-on. Or would she become just another whisper in the darkness? The darkness convulsed as if waiting for her decision, holding its breath what awaited her on the other side. Would she succumb or break free? Ella knew one thing: every choice came with a price, and the darkest of them all was yet to be revealed. The pressure around Ella intensified, squeezing her chest like a vice. Shadows writhed, threading through the rays of flickering light, and for an instant, She could see them, figures she once loved, twisted by anguish. Her heart leaped in despair as they clawed at the memories, begging for acknowledgement. Choose. The voice hissed again, now a cacophony of multiple tones, blending into a single terrifying entity. You cannot escape. Fear paralyzed her. The weight of their gaze pinned her in place, each face a piece of a forgotten puzzle. She was drowning in their grief, their rage. Was it truly worth the cost to remember? Would the truth free her or bind her to a fate worse than death? The locket pulsed in her hand, cold and alive, a tether to the past she tried so hard to forget. With trembling fingers, she turned it over and over, searching for clarity in the chaos. She recalled the laughter, the sunny days, and then the darkness that had changed everything. Do you remember the last game? The voice taunted, sharp as glass. The one we never finished? Ella's pulse raced. Yes, that game. How could she ever forget? They had all promised to play again. But the promise was broken, splintered by loss and fear. The ground shook violently, threatening to swallow her whole. The voices grew louder, more insistent, rattling in her skull like an unwanted thought. Stop, she yelled. I want to forget. I want to go back. Back. The shadows laughed like children in a graveyard, a sound that sent chills cascading down her spine. There's no back, Ella. Only forward, only the truth. Suddenly, the photograph on the floor flared with brilliant light, illuminating a scene she thought was gone forever. For friends, innocence shining in their eyes, playing beneath the sun. Then the flick of a switch, and darkness snatched them away, shrouding their laughter with despair. I'm sorry, she said, tears brimming, knowing those were not her words to say, yet they spilled out anyway. Sorry doesn't set us free. They echoed in unison, their faces mirroring agony and betrayal. You have to remember what you did. You owe us. Ella felt the world tilt dangerously. The shadows wrestled her imperceptibly, tugging her downwards. With a sudden determination, she slammed the locket shut, feeling the visceral pull of the memories that festered within. No more games, she screamed, defiance swelling with every word. The ground shuddered, and the shadows shrieked around her. The bright light enveloped her, and then all at once, it snuffed out. Darkness surrounded her. She was left with nothing but the echo of their cries and the pounding of her heart. Now you're trapped, Ella, the voice rumbled, thick as tar. You chose to forget, but the truth is still here. Ella's breath hitched in her throat. Fear thrummed through her veins, colder and more paralyzing than before. She clawed at the air, grappling with her reality, the void threatening to consume her whole. But then she remembered something: the weight of the locket and the shadows were lying. They needed her fear. Her breath quickened as a thought struck her. Maybe the truth isn't what you want, she whispered to the dark. Maybe it's what I can unleash. A tremor ran through her, a power she'd forgotten she possessed. What if she could turn the tide? What if she could use that fear against them? As she summoned the energy within, the shadows recoiled, whispering bitten promises of destruction. Ella hadn't faced her demons yet, but now, with the locket stirring her resolve, she dared to. Would they be the ones trapped this time? Suddenly, she was thrust back into the memory, echoes of laughter merging with a sinister chant. Remember the game? The darkness quivered, the tides shifting in her favor. It was time to rewrite her fate, to unravel the chains of the past. What awaited her in that twisted game? Would she gain freedom, or was she, too, tethered by the truths she was about to unleash? Ella's heart raced as the darkness tightened around her, but instead of being consumed, she felt a flicker of power ignite within her. The shadows hesitated, their jagged edges blurring, trembling as if they sensed her shift. With the locket still clutched in her hand, she pushed against the pressure, ready to face whatever lurked within the depths of her mind. Show me, she commanded, her voice fierce, echoing defiantly against the consuming void. Show me the truth. The shadows writhed, battling against her boldness. For a moment, silence engulfed her, stretching out as if the world itself was holding its breath. Then, one by one, they swarmed towards her, forming a spiraling vortex. Faces emerged from the fog, her friends, once vibrant, now distorted by time and pain, eyes wide with silent accusations. Remember us? They asked, their voices mingling in desperate harmony. You can't forget, not now. The ground shook violently beneath her feet. Memories struck like lightning, laughing, playing, and then the tragic moment when everything changed. The last game they played was meant to bind them, to create secrets in a sanctuary of joy. But it had turned dark, monstrous, and twisted, lines crossed by sheer fear. Hiding won't work anymore. A whisper beckoned from the recesses of the shadows. Face your monster. With that, the churning images converged into a singular, monstrous figure. It loomed larger than life, a reflection of all Ella had sought to escape. It was her own guilt, magnified and grotesque, a monster born of her inaction and broken promises. An electric charge coursed through her, a terrifying blend of sadness and rage. "You're not real," she said, forcing conviction into her voice. "You're just a piece of my fear." The demon flickered as if testing her resolve, but she felt it weaken in both form and ferocity. The shadows that had once felt like chains now shrank back, warping, twisting as if they feared the very thing they thrived upon: her courage. "I will not let you control me," she screamed, and the words rang out like a challenge against fate itself. As she spoke, dark fissures splintered through the monster's form. It shook, its containing shadows roiling fiercely, shadows that begged with whispered promises of despair. Ella stood her ground, the locket pulsing fiercely in her grip, lighting up the darkness around her with a glow so bright it pierced through the terror. "Remember the truth, Ella," the twisted statue implored, its face shifting in a grotesque representation of her friends. "You abandoned us." Her breath caught as memories surged, the pain of that fateful day washing over her. Had she really chosen to walk away? It suffocated her, the weight of that knowledge trying to crush her spirit. But she felt the warmth of the locket, its pulse a lifeline, reminding her that this was just another game, a game she now wanted to win. "Maybe it's time to finish what we started," she whispered to the shadows, her heart racing with each word. The figures watched her, pleading, laced with a glimmer of hope beneath their sorrow. In that moment of clarity, Ella understood she needed to embrace the truth to truly set herself free. With sudden clarity, she raised the locket high. Let the game begin. In a flicker, the monster recoiled, its form erupting into chaos, shadows fraying like tattered threads. She felt the tide shift again, an overwhelming force propelling her forward, ready to confront the truth she had buried for too long. As the ground beneath her trembled and shifted, she took a step closer to the swirling darkness, determined to gather the fragments of her past, hoping to heal the wounds she'd inflicted on those she loved. But as the shadows crackled and the air thickened with anticipation, a chilling realization sunk in: could she truly handle what she was about to unleash? Would her quest for closure lead to freedom, or merely draw her deeper into their haunted game? Ella gripped the locket tight, ready to face whatever secrets were lurking in the abyss. The question loomed: were the shadows guiding her or luring her towards something far more dangerous? Ella's heart hammered in her chest as she stood at the edge of the fray, shadows swirling around her, pulsing with a darkness that demanded release. The weight of her past had come to a boiling point, pushing her to a precipice from which there was no turning back. She could feel it, a promise of reckoning in the air, tension thick enough to cut through, just as it had been years ago when innocence slipped through her fingers like sand. "Finish it," that voice, that familiar echo, thrummed at the core of her being. The shadows around her twisted and writhed, pulling at the seams of her thoughts and memories, begging her to reconsider. She steeled herself. "This isn't just a game anymore," she whispered, resolve blooming through the clenching fear. It was time to confront the darkness, her own darkness. With the locket pulled high, she could feel its energy, a lifeline tethering her to the girl she used to be and the friends torn from her. In all those memories of laughter and light now dimmed by shadows, she found fragments of familiarity, flickers of hope embedded within the chaos. "Remember me?" One figure lingered longer than the rest. Its eyes mirrored her grief but shimmered brighter. The memories flashed in her mind, their moments together, the game spinning laughter into secrets meant to bind them. They played under the sun, weaving their lives together. She could still hear their laughter ringing, echoing through halls of memory. But that laughter had turned to hoarse cries on that fateful day, shrouded in guilt and despair. The monster before her was a bittersweet blend of all she had buried deep, a grotesque reflection of the choices untaken, each decision unfurling a labyrinth of pain and regret. The truth she buried had clawed its way back to her. Enough, Ella shouted, grounding herself in the moment. The energy of the locket flared, illuminating gaps in the shadows, pushing back the veil of darkness with every thundering beat of her heart. With newfound strength, she wove through the tendrils of despair, her feet finding purchase in the world caving around her. "Let them go," she cried, a plea and a command all at once. The shadows faltered, flickering at the edges of her vision. She inhaled sharply, as if daring to breathe in light, her resolve becoming palpable, shredding the veil of chaos that complained against her will. "I will not keep you bound to suffering." With every ounce of determination, she stepped forward, and as she did, the shadows recoiled, whispering her name in desperate tones. "Ella, you cannot forget us, I won't forget you." She countered, tears pooling in her eyes, not of sorrow but catharsis. "I will honor you, but I will not let fear bind me." The locket glowed brighter, transforming into a beacon that chased away the shadows, illuminating the friends long lost and perpetually searching. One by one, their faces softened, twisting back into the light, their anguish receding into the night. Ella moved closer, and as she did, the shadows swirled like smoke, dissipating into the ether, and just like that, the creature's essence unraveled, the darkness splitting like thin ice beneath her weight. The surge of their laughter, their joy enveloped her, intertwining with the pain but now laced with understanding. "Ella," the figures whispered, their outlines softening, morphing into radiant beings of light. "You freed us. Thank you." With that, the night grew still. The oppressive weight released its grip, and the moment suspended in time turned tangible. Ella closed her eyes, relief rushing over her as she smiled through her tears. "Thank you for reminding me of the truth," she breathed, knowing that they could finally rest, and so could she. The locket pulsed once more, sending waves of warmth through her chest, and suddenly, she felt herself rooted in the present. The game had come to an end, and this time, she had emerged victorious, facing the shadows, embracing the truths in shining light. As daylight began to seep through the cracks of her perception, Ella felt lighter, freer than she had in years. The burdens of the past had been lifted, and although scars remained, they became part of her story, reminders of the strength she hadn't realized she possessed. Ella stepped from the shed, breathing deeply as she rose from the depths of her memories, the weight of the night breaking like dawn on the horizon. She stepped out into the sunlight, knowing she had faced her own darkness and emerged radiant. Home awaited, a sanctuary reborn. The path forward flickered with promise, and as Ella walked back toward her home, she smiled, stirring excitement in her heart. She knew the truth now. There would always be shadows, but love, forgiveness, and understanding could light the way. Time had not only run out, it had delivered her to the moment she needed most. And for the first time in a long while, Ella felt a sense of peace settle over her, a promise of new beginnings woven into the fabric of her life. Now, if you want to keep experiencing incredible stories and unravel more mysteries like Ella's, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel. This is the moment to show your support. Click that bell so you never miss an update. Don't forget to smash that like button now to help us grow, feed the algorithm, and spread the love. We want to hear from you too. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories on the story. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and become part of our story-loving family. Your support means the world.